The recording is on? Yeah. Feel free to start sharing to the Facebook Live or something there. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm really excited about this event. We were looking for Ray to join us. He's a brilliant entrepreneur, and Derek will introduce him. I have a few words about Go Global community and our past events. So Go Global community in Russia is the free community for English-speaking entrepreneurs who are seeking to go global. And we try to actually unite the people to stimulate and encourage them to share their expertise, experience, and connections, and help each other to achieve success on the global stage. I founded this community quite a while ago, and we recently started the events, and it's going really successfully. People are very helpful, and we've got amazing speakers joining to speak with our community. Just remember that the mission of the community is to help each other, is to share your problems, suggestions, and if somebody on the community needs help, try to help them, and the other way around. The speakers we already had during our previous events are famous entrepreneurs, like we had Medina Islam talking to us early March, and he's a successful entrepreneur and a Hollywood star. Derek had a talk about how to do customer development in the United States. I myself, I spoke about how to actually become a company that can that becomes attractive for investors for funding, so how to raise capital and so on. We had the recent speaker, we had Bob Dorff, an amazing author and entrepreneur, a worldwide famous person, and he spoke to the community. It was very interesting. And we will have a few more speakers coming up in a few weeks. That will be Bill Reichert, a managing director of Garage Ventures, and very famous venture capitalist in Silicon Valley. Gary Fowler will speak soon as well about how to have thriving in the chaos and going global to win. And one other speaker we will also have is David Yang, the founder of EVA and founder of Abi, and many more to come. So in order to follow these events and learn about those speakers and have a chance to speak with them, make sure that you are part of the community. Just join our Telegram channel. Feel free to scan this barcode. It will take you to the community, or just go on Telegram. Type in Go Global Russia in English, and you'll be there. It's free. And those who is interested to talk about how to get global, and you need help, your business is growing in Russia, and you're trying to get to the United States, feel free to reach out to me. This is my direct contacts. I can help you with further steps. And we probably, as part of GSD, can take your company to the United States and help you with sales and funding and so on. Let me introduce Derek. Derek Distenfield. He is a successful entrepreneur and founder of at least 4 companies that I'm aware of. He was on the top management at Payment 360. The company they started from zero and grew to $2 billion business. It's an amazing result. He also ran a famous accelerator Banker Labs. And what inspires me about Derek, that he also a US Army veteran, and he saved lives of people in the real battle. So he actually has an award, an Army award. So let me introduce, pass the word to Derek, and he can speak, introduce Ray further.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining. I just want to say I am the co-founder of GSD Venture Studios, but I am an entrepreneur first and foremost. And what that means is I will help any entrepreneur in any stage with all I can, regardless if you're a GSD portfolio company or not. And part of the reason that I have that mentality is because of the gentleman, Ray Antonino, that I'm speaking with. And I know that he has really implored that in me, as give first is one of the Techstars virtues that I know Ray has exuberated. And it's always been very motivational for me to see that. Ray is got a great company. I'm going to let him tell you about it. He is based in the United States. What I like about Ray is he has been through the good, the bad, and the ugly of entrepreneurship. And one of the lessons that Techstars talks a lot about, although I haven't been through their accelerator, I attended Patriot Boot Camp with Ray and worked with Patriot Boot Camp with Ray. But one of the things that they spend a lot of time talking about is that when you're looking for mentors and looking for people to look up to, oftentimes we look for the Zuckerbergs or the Gates or the people that are so far ahead of you that they're really not relevant. And let me say something very provocative. Mark Zuckerberg has no idea how to raise an A round in Silicon Valley. And he has no idea how to raise a seed round. He wouldn't know where to start. And it's not because he's stupid, but it's when Facebook raised money for their seed round or their A round, that was 2005, 2006. That is almost a world ago from today. So Ray is doing great things, and he's not so far ahead of everybody on this call and in this community that he's not relevant. And so we're going to have I'm going to ask Ray some questions and kind of guide the discussion and get some value from him. And then we're going to do an Ask Me Anything, as we say in Silicon Valley, an AMA, and you can ask Ray some questions. So without further ado, everyone meet Ray Antonino. He is the CEO of permits.com. Hey, Ray, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Derek, thank you so much for having me. I want to first start off by saying, Daniel, Gary, Derek, thank you guys for thinking enough of my experience where I'm at and that it can bring value to your team. I really look forward to doing and bringing anything I can. I love what you said. You guys both said some good stuff in this that I before I even jump into myself, I think that's so critical, and I would try like hell to beat this drum is give first, give from where you can. In fact, yesterday, when I was announcing it to folks on LinkedIn, I said exactly that. You know, it's pretty incredible that me from where I'm at can actually contribute to startups in a whole nother country. And it's because it's all relevant. We're a big community. We're trying to help lift each other up. So that's the intention here today. I hope that, by the way, the AMA, I want it to be real. So I want to see faces if you have the ability to have cameras on and real questions. So with that said, Ray Antonino, CEO of permits.com. We built some technology that makes it really easy for contractors to get construction permits nationwide. Been at the grind for 4 years and 2 months, 4 years, 3 months, and let me take a look here, 10 days exactly that I've been doing this. And I have seen a lot of highs and a lot of lows, been part of them all, taking my wife on a hell of a roller coaster. So we'll get started.
So Ray, tell us a little bit about your background, and are you technical, and kind of how did you get to where you are with this idea of permits.com?
Well, not technical, not by any stretch. It really started off as being a personal problem. My wife and I had built a small construction company. We were really didn't think much of it, honestly. It was just a construction company during a down market, but effectively we understood that technology would help our company. So we built a little application to run our own company. It was only because of this consistent problem as we were growing, where we found ourselves in new municipalities, new borders. I'm not sure how you guys use it over there, Russia, whatnot, but effectively we found ourselves growing into areas where it had other requirements. And we kept having this problem of always having to figure out what the hell is actually needed. So we kind of embedded that into the little product we built. Fast forward, one day somebody said, "You built a technology startup." I didn't know what the hell that meant. And Derek and I both happened to go through, I think we went through the same Patriot Boot Camp together. You might have went through one right before me, but I know we met at Goldman Sachs in New York, or shortly thereafter. And yeah, and the rest is history. That's how it got started, from my own problem.
And talk about how the product has evolved from the initial startup that you started and how it evolved to where it is today.
Well, we started off as a task management app, and that was the app we used for running our company. And we said, hey, this would be great to put in the hands of many contractors. But by the time that we had really learned what it was to be a tech startup, and that we were even a startup for that matter, we found ourselves up against a lot of competition. We were fortunate to be accepted into Techstars, which Derek has spoke to. We were out of the Austin, Texas program. And fortunately, I had the real opportunity of learning from exceptional mentors. And that's going to be a thread that you'll hear from me consistently, is that during the program, you actually meet with 120 mentors over 20-minute back-to-back pitches for 2 straight weeks. And these mentors these are game-changing people. They've been there, done it. They've been over the hills. They can see way ahead of you. And really, one of them just kept challenging me. A couple of them kept challenging me, but one of them particularly, he said to me, he goes, "Ray, what do you think will make people, well, first of all, what's your differentiator?" And it was that I had this permitting thing. And he said, "Well, do you think the permitting thing in and of itself within your own application will," let's see here. Let's see, please turn your camera. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Yeah. Do you think that there's something in this application that is different that you could offer back to all of those other competitors today and be a bigger thing?" And ultimately the answer was, yeah, I think we can. But how we got where we are today is it just started from there. That was just the very beginning of realizing something small that was built in something bigger was actually the thing to focus on. And what that's evolved into since is incredibly different than what it was then.
And you might know better than me, but I know of at least 3 pivots that I would say is that about right? Is that fair?
Yeah. And the irony is, as we talk today, because of the coronavirus, we're actually back to square one. So I'm happy to share it if you want me to.
No, well, what I really wanted to do is, I think it's noteworthy that you pivoted, but talk to me tactically about the decision, and specifically about, how you make the decision. I know that you've pivoted quickly, but intelligently. Can you maybe give some tips on how you've been able to do that? I mean, you've pivoted 2 times in the last 2 months that I've spoken to you, but all based on data with a lot of rigor. But how do you pivot at Silicon Valley speed?
Well, you have to first have the mindset that you're actually trying to build something that's meaningful enough to touch a lot of people, and that it has a lot of value. And once you have that as kind of your true north, then it opens you up to not take, my baby. Sorry, I'm losing my voice, guys. I started losing my voice yesterday. Give me 1 second here. So, my baby started off as a solution to myself and my own company, but in the real world, it wasn't working out. And dropping the pride and saying, hey, I need to listen to what the feedback is that I'm getting. And early on, the feedback was, we had one customer. We thought, well, I'll just tell you, we had a customer that said, we love it. We love it. We love it. And I say one customer, it was 52 of them, actually. The problem was I was talking with the wrong people. And I found out later that there's a big difference between the people who hold the pain and the people who hold the purse. And to make sure that you focus on the people holding the purse, or bring them into the conversation early enough to figure out if you're wasting your time. So there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, I could unpack this for a day, but effectively listening, being willing to change, but very importantly, and this is something that I think I'm gonna say something that contradicts what a lot of people say. There is a time and a place for an entrepreneur to put their line in the sand and say, this is the right path. And I'm going to take this path a little longer than what the market's telling me. And it's because I see something that they don't. And you have to be very careful there, because you can run out of money seeing something that people don't to fruition. And for myself, that's happened a couple times. I think one of the, I'll liken it to this, and I'm pretty sure the audience will grasp. Basically, when you think of Henry Ford as a prime example, when people once said, how do I get from A to B faster? You would have asked them back in the day and they would have said more horses, when the guy clearly understood, no, it's a vehicle. It's got 4 wheels and it's got a motor and a combustible motor and everything else. You have to know that sometimes what you believe in is real, that it's worth going after, but you have to be open to listening along the way. You may not be able to get there right out of the gate, but if that can be your true north and you're willing to kind of deviate and learn along the way, it can bring a lot of value to you. And I think those are where the real opportunities are. One last thing I would say, Derek, is this, and it comes down to money. I think one of the advantages I've had is always running with less money, because less money does not allow you to do a lot of things, to test a lot of things without actually really being at a place where you're learning a lot of things. And so through less money, I've been able to very quickly go, I know that doesn't make a damn bit of sense, or yeah, this is something we should focus on and here's why. I think that's helped me more than anything.
Expand on the less money. Talk a little bit about your spend and give people a little understanding of what that means.
Well, look, fundraising's hard, right? For most of you on the call, I assume that, one of the things you're looking toward with GSD or an accelerator, either of the two are great, is to find the resources, mentorship, and stuff like that that'll help you accelerate your company and get you the connections to people who have the checkbooks. The reality is fundraising is really hard. And while you need great opportunities by way of GSD or Techstars or any of those, it's hard. And for myself, I struggled with fundraising. I think I struggled just as many do with fundraising. And so I never really had the luxury of having a lot of money. I've been fortunate to find the 11 investors I have that believe enough and that have been with me through this crazy ass roller coaster. But at the end of the day, I think one of my challenges, and it may not be the same for most, but I was an entrepreneur twice before. Traditional business. So think brick and mortar, think service-based business. And that's a very different mindset. And so for me, at least, it took a while to understand the mind of the VC, the person I'm trying to, pick the pocketbook of. And, when they would say no, or they would give me some excuse or something, quite frankly, I took it offensive early on, and it was the wrong thing to do. In hindsight, I've learned, fortunately, I'm still here to learn, but I learned that no, these people have a thesis. They have a belief that this is the thing that they want to put their investment in. It fits this box, and I either fit that box or I don't. And so that's been the challenge. I'm probably running over a little long in the fundraising piece, but really that's been the reason, is because fundraising was so difficult.
So talk about how going back to Techstars. First, kind of give a plug for what Techstars is. I want to make sure everybody knows. Everyone knows what Y Combinator is, but what is Techstars? Talk about your experience there, but also talk about going back to venture life. The doesn't necessarily, have to be the first accelerator. Doesn't have to be your only accelerator, and you could use that as a path. And what your thoughts are, just overall.
Well, you said Techstars, and you said what else? Something had.
Venture Hive. Wasn't that your first accelerator?
Actually, I went to one just before that. It actually helped me. It was a state-run program, but yeah, I mean, that was one that got me teed up. So the importance of accelerators, is that what the question is?
Talk about your experience with accelerators. Do you think they're a good idea? Have they been helpful?
Yeah. They're like anything, right? There's good ones, there's good intentioned ones, and then there's not so good ones, and then there's great ones. I've had the fortune of being part of one that was good intentioned, one that was okay, and one that was fantastic. And so, I'm not sure where you want me to go with this particularly, but, as you look to either a GSD Venture Studios or you look to a Techstars of the world, the key thing is looking for organizations that care. One thing I will say, and I am giving you a plug here, is that, just being part of your last call and then this one and seeing what other stuff you've been doing by way of your Twitter and whatnot, Derek, is that you guys are actually doing the right thing. You're like in a give first. We want to help our community. We want to give the content, the mentorship, and so forth. And as a founder, each and every one of us on this call should know that's exactly what you need. And you need people that are doing it selflessly, not for some vested interest. Now, don't get me wrong. Techstars wants to figure out who the top 10 are to pick, because they know that the chances of getting 2 or 3 knock the ball out of the parks get higher as a result of giving first. But it is not at the core of who they are. And I would say that's the same thing here. And Danielle, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, is exactly what you said earlier in the beginning. Give first, provide an educational platform, bring people together. I've made some notes in your opening statement: mentorship, contribution, be intentional in that. And so with accelerators, find your tribe, find the one that makes sense for you, and then be part of that community, contribute to it more than they give to you. And amazing things will unlock itself.
Thanks for those comments. And I'll if people have questions specific about accelerators, we'll give them a chance to ask. But sure. Let's talk a little bit about everyone's favorite subject, which is fundraising. Give everyone a little background about your fundraising journey. And, because I think there's this notion on TechCrunch that you go on a road show for a couple weeks, and then you get a term sheet, and then you sign it, and then you're in TechCrunch. Has that been your experience?
No, that is not my experience. Pardon me, I'm going to shut this thing off. It seems like I must have another Slack channel going crazy. But no, it's not my experience. It's not most experience. It's what we read about. It's what we see. But those are the highlights. Those are the exception, not the rule. The reality is it's hard work. You have to first, if we went through the step-by-step, the key thing is identifying who the right people are to go after. Understand what I spoke to it just a moment ago, understand what their thesis is, what their intention of investing is, because they've taken on money from folks that have a lot bigger pocketbooks than they do and said, here's what we're going to invest in. Here's what it looks like. And so if you come along, knock on their door, and you don't fit that, you're wasting your time and theirs, and it will demoralize you over some period of time. So do yourself the favor of honing in on the right people to knock the door of. But then when you get to that point, that's a whole nother thing. So there's a lot to speak to that. You just ask the questions.
And how do you knock on the door? What tips do you have for that?
Well, so we always hear it's the warm introduction, right? It's to try to find the so-and-so that's connected. I think specifically speaking to your audience today is to say, my bet is the way I understand it is some great Russian companies, particularly in the AI space, want to get into the US market, right? And you have established connections in the US. You become that warm entry point. And of course, you've built credibility with with these people that are necessary that you need to make these connections to. So in fundraising in general, it's a matter of finding and identifying the people that can connect you with the people you need. Now, that's the warm intro, and that's what we're told every day. I will say that I have found that to be less as impactful as actually getting out there, actually building a company and being relevant where people actually see you and can't miss you. Derek, at first, when you had highlighted the wins on, on stage and all these pitch events that I have been to, I was like, that's really not part of this. But actually it is, because it's making you relevant. It's getting you the exposure. Your ass is refining your message. Your people are like, hey, talk to me. They're a part of your journey. And one of those key things with landing any investors is getting them on early enough that they can be along for the journey, right? But there's another side to that. You can't leave them on the sidelines forever. At some point, they got to shit or get off the pot. And you got to be careful. That's a delicate balance. But at the end of the day, I think it's a matter of get out there, get the exposure, and warm leads are great.
And you've had some pretty interesting situations with your cash flow where you've gotten down to the wire. Can you maybe just tell some of those stories? Just because I think I just think they're Silicon Valley stories that aren't in TechCrunch enough.
Well, guys, listen, 2 weeks ago, I put in more money into my account. I'm not afraid to share this. I don't care that it's Facebook Live or whatnot, but we'd come to a point, once again, very tight. We needed to put money in the bank or say we need to trim this back. And you've got to be willing to do that if you can. But speaking to the times, it's been plenty. I could think of at least 4 where I've been down to less than $10,000 in the bank. And then, that's you're done in 3 weeks pretty much. Going back to some of those pitch competitions, thank God I had them because happened to win them and put some more money in the coffers. But on the other side of that was also having the experience of meeting great people who invested, have been longtime investors since, and bringing them along for the journey. So, I've been on this roller coaster for a long time. I'm not sure what part of that, Derek, would bring any value to your audience, but you've got to believe in what you're doing, and you've got to make sure that you're paying attention to the numbers. Numbers don't lie. Don't put your head in the sand. I will draw on one thing, and I will say this. I draw from a lot of faith. I'm a faith-based believer, and I walk in faith quite often. Derek, you've watched me religiously speak to that. So, I won't go down that path too much here, but, find that thing for you that gives you that total peace. I think, Derek, one thing that would probably be really important to share is, why am I capable of making really big decisions, putting money into stuff that makes no sense based on the checkbook at the time that I do? And I will tell you all that it's all because I have failed before. I failed absolutely miserably. I was 20. I was building an empire. 23, I made more money than I've ever made in my life. 27, completely bankrupt. And when I was bankrupt, I lost everything. Rental properties, commercial properties, an entire business, lost it all. It took 3 years to get through that mentally. But one of the best things that ever happened to me was failing and losing everything, because you really, after coming through it on the other side, you realize that wasn't that big a damn deal. Why did I make it such a devastating thing on myself? The sun shined tomorrow. It's going to shine again. Get your ass up and go knock it out. And so as I make decisions today, I do not make them from fear. I make them from the belief in myself and my faith that it's my job to show up and that he will provide. And that's how I live.
That's incredible, Ray. I think that's an incredible journey of resilience. And certainly this is a time where resilience is needed. The last question I want to touch on is, and then I'll open it up, is talk to me about the pandemic and how you're doing things differently. And just kind of circle it back to where we are post-COVID world. And how are you looking at it? How have you changed? How have you stayed the same? What are your views on what's going on?
Wow, that's a lot. So first of all, to set the tone, we had already been a really small company and we've already been remote. So for us to have the remote workforce and to have the phone system set up and the capabilities to access everything remote was already in place. So we didn't have that blunt force experience that some people are having. Beyond that, though, in terms of business and how we're adapting, is to say, and this goes to what I said earlier, we find ourselves full circle all the way back where we were. You know, when we first set out to do this, our true north was that we wanted to be this data company for providing permit information based on 2 questions: what am I doing and where am I doing it? That was our true north. That was the high level. How we got there didn't matter. Speaking to what I said earlier about it's okay to, you know, to find different paths to get there. But our first at bat was putting permitting building department software in all these building departments that do not have permitting. That went over like a lead balloon 4 years ago. It was completely a waste of my time. But fast forward to today, there's 17,000 building departments in the US that do not offer online permitting. That means the contractor cannot get a construction permit online. Thousands of those building departments are closed because they can't do that. And that was where the opportunity came to say, wait a second, a technology of which we've built 4 years ago, of which we've been acting as a building department by people making requests and us actually working with the building department on the other side, was to say, why don't we repurpose what we've built and give it to the municipalities for free and take a small little technology fee for every transaction that occurs. Now, because of what we've learned about government in the past, and you know, not necessarily one month ago, we had no interest in working with government again. But I did, being an entrepreneur who has the true north of what they want to achieve, but also being willing to swallow their pride and say, hey, I want to, let's explore this. It's an idea. Let's explore it. Let's float the idea. I floated the idea, and I'm now talking with bureau chiefs from the U.S. Census Department who can drive this adoption because they need to capture that information from the 17,000 building departments that are not providing it monthly. I'm getting lieutenant governors from states that are interested in driving this adoption to their local municipalities. A governor of one of the states here locally is interested in it. So floated it, got the feedback, sent out some emails to some building officials, and found, oh shit, they're actually ready to talk this time around. You know why? Because complacency is no more. They have to get online. Now, the problem has always been they can't afford it, or that the stuff that's available to them is this big box stuff that's got all sorts of nuance to it and it takes months to figure out and deploy. So as an entrepreneur, it's our responsibility to say, what of this environment can we contribute to or benefit from and bring value to? And this became very clear and obvious to us. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And what I want to do is open it up for anyone to ask a question. So if you want to just raise your hand, I'll call on you, or you can ask it in chat.
Yeah,
Gus,
and anybody who wants to throw video on, please throw video on. I love looking at faces. Alex, thank you. Gus, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, if you don't have video, you don't have it. But if you have it, please do.
Go ahead,
you know, mine is not so much a question as an observation. I mean, I'm in the middle of doing a huge renovation to my house, and in Miami Beach, we were able to file the permits online because actually the department closed. Some departments north of us have shut down completely because they can't process anything.
Yeah.
So you're going to get so much business as a result of this that you will not be able to put enough money in the bank to handle the cash flow. That's my prediction.
Well, Gus, thank you. It's been a 4-year journey, And I'll tell you that when COVID-19 hit and we got some permits from out in California for solar permits, and we found out that 3 of the building departments were closed and a couple of them were willing to accept email where they originally required us to always put boots on the ground. Ding, the light went off. Holy shit, this is the moment to seize the opportunity. And we've been preparing for this for 4 years and never knew it. And so, Gus, you're absolutely right. I think that's to every entrepreneur on this call, that's how your mind has to be thinking.
Who else has a question about fundraising, going to accelerators in the US, anything in general? Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I want to ask a question. I have also pretty almost same story in my businesses. I had 4 previous businesses and now I have 5th. And all my previous businesses were not IT businesses, just real businesses like yours, I think. And that's my question. What kind of help do you get from your experience of real businesses now than you are startupper in IT business? And does it matter then you fundraising, or it doesn't matter?
Okay. First, thank you, Alex. Great question. So I'm going to remember the second part of that, which is how does it relate to fundraising? From the perspective of drawing upon 2 prior businesses, one being a brick and mortar, sold big products, and then the other being a service company, which was a construction company. And now the world of technology. I will say that what I probably would, and I do this when I mentor folks on Saturday, is when I'm talking to folks that have never had a business before, but they have a technology company, I'm always helping them to see things through the lens of, are you building something that matters? Can you make money? And can you get to cash flow positive without necessarily making that what you state publicly to your investors? Because it's a different mindset, and we'll transfer into that in a moment, but it's a different mindset. And I think for people that have had the experience that you have and myself, is that it's a little tough sometimes to translate that. When you think of having a plumbing company, right? Let's just be a plumber for a second. You know, a plumbing company has a competitor. You kind of know what a market price is. You kind of get a sense of all these things they're not really a lot of variables that are unknown anyway. And so you can approach business very different, but it's far less scalable in most contexts. The world and how you would raise money on that, right, is you would go and you would ask somebody to help you, fund you, loan you, and you'd pay them back. And that's kind of how it works. Trying to transfer that mindset over to this world of people will actually fund you money on a vision, assuming you're the right team and they believe in the market potential. That was kind of hard for me to grasp. And because it was hard for me, I also made it hard for investors to like me because it didn't make sense. In hindsight, however, I would say that the thing that I've learned transferring this over to the investment world is I really wish that I would have done one thing right early on. And it's something that's so fundamental, is that why did I look at the world of startups as some mythological thing where, oh, profit, revenue, like I don't need to worry about that? No, horseshit. You actually do need to worry about that. That should be the very first thing on your mind. Build something that matters, that people are willing to pay for, and get it in their hands quickly so you can iterate it on and build something great. And that's the one thing I wish to God I would have done early on. But I allowed myself, so to a fault of having that prior experience, was that I didn't think in a new way of thinking, but I allowed myself not to, I kind of compartmentalized the past and said, that's not relevant. And it is relevant. It's completely relevant. And had I been focused on that, I would have had a lot more investors knocking at the front door than the other way around.
One of the things that I talk about is you got to relentlessly follow the money. So the best companies follow the money. And you've kind of mentioned that a couple times in a different way, Ray, but what do you do What other advice can you give tactically about following the money and making sure you're getting to cash flow positive quickly? I think that sounds good, but tactically, what would you say that you need to do?
Well, the very first thing when I hear that is I say, well, that's a true statement. It's a good thing to follow money, but let's remember we're trying to build things that are innovative and so forth. So a lot of times you don't have the luxury of people that are readily open to open their checkbooks to ideas and possibilities. And so what you can find yourself doing in following the money is perhaps you're doing something that is either A, it's not a big enough market, right? It's for a very specific niche thing. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this, but you got to be careful not to get caught in that, right? So the key is that as I listen to what people have, first of all, I know the industry, I know problems that exist, but I also challenge myself that at any point I say, yeah, I think so-and-so would love to do this. The second I say I think, or they should, or anything that's other than it is, then it's a hypothesis. And that hypothesis needs to be tested. And the very next thing you do is you just ask a simple question. Okay, great. I just did a customer discovery interview 3 weeks ago, just before everything went to hell. And we were talking about some compliance technology that we had been building. And I wanted to get the feedback from this gentleman. So somebody I trust, I wanted honest feedback. And I said, well, listen, so if I could get what you want built, and assuming I would be interested in building that, because it's got to be for 80% of the audience, not 20%, would you pay for it and how much? And so that's an important thing, is asking for the checkbook, asking somebody for the money. Because if you don't get that commitment early on, that's the biggest mistake I made when I first went out to building officials 4 years ago. I got 52 of them to say, oh, I love it. We'd love it. They even let us in their own offices for days, taught us everything we needed to know about doing it the right way, but they weren't the ones that had the checkbook, and they weren't the ones that felt the pain. So I think in summarizing, I would just say, to the point of the money, following the money, have your hypothesis, test it beyond just the one or two people that you know, and validate that it's something bigger and that there's a lot of opportunity there, and then make that the direction you take, if that's in line with your true north.
Got it. Who else has a question?
Can I ask a question, please? I think I speak with like hundreds of entrepreneurs every week. And I sometimes see different personalities of people, and a lot of entrepreneurs right now facing the crisis, and they go on a saving mode, or like better safe and stay not doing much without doing aggressive steps, rather than act and actually use this as an opportunity. So in your opinion, this current crisis, or any other crisis, doesn't matter, is it like something bad happening, or is it an opportunity for entrepreneurs? Like, what's your opinion?
Well, I think there is a difference. Every startup is different. There's a lot to be said about an entrepreneur who can say, you know what, we don't have an angle here. Well, there's not an opportunity for us in this market. And for that entrepreneur, it makes perfect sense that they can restrict themselves or constrict themselves. I liken it to being a mothball, right? Just getting small as possible, running as lean as possible. You know, so for that entrepreneur, which, by the way, just before coronavirus hit and we were looking at this need to put more money in, I myself was considering the idea of driving Uber while my wife makes sales calls during the day. Like I'm not too proud to not say that. That's where I was, right? And it was actually the first time I'd come that close to actually saying, let's do it. And that's because we were having a little bit of a struggle with actually landing people that would actually open up their checkbook for what particularly we wanted. And we had to be very careful with the team we had. Post-COVID, an entrepreneur has to ask themselves, do we have something that can benefit the market? And in this new world, because it is a new world. And if you can't, if you don't, then do yourself the favor of being honest with yourself and just saying, you know what? Life's changed. It changed overnight. It's been 100 years damn near since this happened before, right? It's okay. Like, it's okay to say, you know what? This is not going to work in this market. Nothing about this is going to work. Don't drive yourself into the hole where you have tons of debt, liability, borrowing from family, whatever that is. If you know fundamentally it's not right, don't do that. I made that mistake on my first business. On the other side of that, if you're an entrepreneur and you said, hey, wait a second, what if we did this? Remember I just said, what if? What if becomes a hypothesis? It's instantly in my head. It means it needs tested. I'll never forget that. It's every time I say that, anytime somebody talks to me, as soon as they say, what if, the very next thing I ask them is, what have you done to test it? And that's what you should do to yourself. But what if we did this thing over here, or this thing was like, if you have that and you're sitting on it right now, you're an entrepreneur. That's what you are. And so, and I say that respectfully, there's nothing wrong with entrepreneurs. I have best friends that are entrepreneurs. I love them. They're good people, but they're not entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are bold. They see a vision, they sell a vision, and they go try to prove or disprove whatever the hell it is that their vision is. And the best entrepreneurs remove pride from the equation.
Yeah, it's actually excellent answer. Thanks. I mean, it's really inspiring, actually.
Any other questions?
We got some great people here. Come on, I can't pronounce half these names. Lots of letters. I'm gonna have to do a Google thing.
Come on, it's easy.
All right.
Anybody step
I have
up.
another question, if I may. I think it's also relevant. I mean, at least what I hear from people here in Russia. Here's the situation. Like, United States are known for like lots of capital and venture capital, especially, and the market is pretty strong even now. For entrepreneurs that are coming to the United States to build business, they have lots of things missing, like reputation, connections, like they don't know the market and so on. So one of the advantages, though, those people is that they have remote teams that, like, for example, in Russia, is the cost of headcount for developers is like 10 times less than in US, which is an advantage, right? But in order for them to serve customers, like before they enter the market, they have many different angles. And one of the angles, how would you start sales? How do you do sales yourself? Like, and especially how do you do sales during crisis right now? Maybe something changed. Maybe you have some tactic advice for the United States market for B2B customers, like if I make it more precise.
Yeah, there's a couple things in here. So you have a couple things. You have the international reach, right? I got to make the note or I'll forget. This little mind of mine doesn't last long. International reach. You have the sales process, what you might suggest, and then perhaps the tactic due to the COVID-19 and how sensitive the situation is, right?
Yeah, right. I just, the background of this, so the people who are asking those questions are entrepreneurs from outside the US, but I mean, it's relevant to most of the entrepreneurs. The key question is the sales tactics, of course, like maybe you have some hints of how to convert people into warm, hot leads, and how do you advise to approach them like via email or direct cold call, or like build connection first, like, or LinkedIn connection, like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, so first let me start by saying, this is not the international thing is not something I'm familiar with, right? And I think most of the folks that are from Russia that want to come to the US aren't, and vice versa. So that's exactly why you guys exist, right? I mean, it's because you offer that bridge to the US and you give them the mentorship, the connections, the so forth. Because what you're doing is you're vetting these founders, because you're not putting your career capital out there for just anybody. So that's an important thing as somebody internationally needs to leverage exactly this environment. Number one, from a sale, and then that leads to other opportunities. From a sales thing, now, again, I'm not an international guy. I think there is something to be said about the fact that a Russian company in the U.S. that wants to do business in the U.S. probably needs to have some sort of, dare I say this, but a facade that you're in the U.S. And what I mean by that is you need a phone number that's in the U.S. You need somebody who speaks good English. And you need an address, and and that's why WeWork was so great, because you could actually just write an address. But you need, I personally believe that's how I would approach it, because I want to look as though my foot is on the ground there, and not some distant country, and allow for unfortunately any negative thoughts I might have toward any other country out there. Whether it's China, whether it's Russia, whether it's Vietnam, it doesn't matter. Like, I need that removed from the equation. And I'm probably going to want to be, feel like, oh, cool, no problem. Yeah, they're in the U.S. or they have a footprint in the U.S. and I'm good to do business with them. So that's number one. As far as sensitivity, I don't know about you guys, but for the first 2-3 weeks after this COVID crisis, every email came out from every CEO on the planet with all their sensitivity email bullshit. At the end of the day, do you have a product that solves a real need, and really can help in the now? If you have it in the now, I think you can be a little bit more direct. Look, I get that times are tough. We have a thing that solves this problem. We think that you are you're the prime customer for it. We'd love to share more. I think you can do that. And I would cut through it because of all the noise. If you don't think you actually have something, or you want to start the relationship to start learning if what you're developing can be something that would get sold. And I don't know where the startups are in their journey, but I think that's a different tact. That's a starting the conversation. Hey, listen, we're a Russian company just stepping foot in the U.S. We've taken, this beachhead here in San Francisco or whatever, and it appears as though you're in a marketplace of which we've been able to support in other areas. Would love to have a conversation. Not sure that we're the right fit today, but possibly we are. I think that becomes a little less in the punch, but it's appropriate because you don't know for sure. Or maybe you do, that you're not ready, and that kind of conversation. But as far as getting overly sensitive about the situation, look, we're all big boys and girls, and we've had 3 or 4 weeks to digest this shit. It's a new world. We're back. Let's get to business. Let's talk. What do we need to do to accelerate? And I don't think anybody in the U.S. thinks any different than that.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, well, let's wrap it up. Ray, thanks so much for joining us. How can we follow you? I think you're on Twitter. What's the best way to keep in touch with Ray?
Yeah, cool. One, Ray Nino, RAYNINO, at Twitter, and Ray Antonino, my name, which is on the screen here, on LinkedIn. One thing I'll share is I'm assuming most of you on the call are English speaking. If Saturdays are flexible for you, and I can work around some time if you ever want to reach out. I typically make time between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern time, and I do this every Saturday. I mentor from where I can. I always say that, mentor from where I can. I'm happy to be of help, and all you got to do is email me, Ray, RAY, at permits.com, RAY at permits.com. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much, Ray. Danielle, I'll turn it over to you to close it out.
Thank you. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Derek. I really appreciate a really great talk. I myself always like to speak with founders that have original stories and have experience. As an entrepreneur myself, I also feel those scars that you have. Like, every entrepreneur becomes a success once he has those scars. That's my personal phrase that I explain what is entrepreneurship with having those scars. So I really appreciate your time, and I will follow up with an email to everyone when we have this video up on YouTube, and we'll share you the link. And if you would have questions to Ray, you can write directly to him following his contacts. Or if you want to connect with Ray, text me, and I'll make sure that I'll connect if Ray will have availability for you. Thank you, everyone. We will have more events and announcements soon, and stay tuned. Take care. Goodbye.
Thank you, guys. It was great.
Thank you.